I'll call our agenda session into order. Ms. Robinson is going to be here. She's just going to be a little bit late. So welcome everybody. And with that welcome, I'll turn it over to Mr. Garrett.
Welcome also. We have 6 or so speakers, so we'll call you up one at a time. I'm going to read this once. So this is the delegation statement. Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns that you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since the superintendent is responsible for individual employees. Please limit your remarks to 5 minutes. We have a timer. I will tell you when there's 1 minute remaining, and we will start with Christine Dewan, who has been here very patient for a while.
Thanks for having me. What originally started off with me trying to get my daughter in the school that I wanted to for next year ended up being about inclusion and wanting to talk about kids going into kindergarten and first grade. I do think there have been several good things about inclusion and that we're there now. It's caused some overcrowding in the schools, but my concern revolves around 3 things now. A couple of my neighbors actually are teachers at 2 of the schools. One has left and moved to Grace, but was part of public school. And the 3 things that I wanted to address are, she was telling me that some of the kids that, the problems that she has is that some are entering kindergarten and first grade not knowing any English at all. At least 4 to 7 did not know that in her first 2 years at one of the public schools. There were at least 6 that had not been read to, and that was parents coming in for conferences acknowledging that. And then the third being then the kids that are left who are on grade level. All of those are left to be ignored, and it's hard for teachers to focus on each individual group. I talked to someone who teaches at a private school, and she was mentioning a couple of solutions. She brought up pull-out programs for the English to be taught, that maybe even foreign language teachers could try to be used for that. That would go against inclusion, but they would be out of the classroom for an hour, this allowing for them to catch up. Parents would have to be talked to about this, obviously by bilingual people from the school, to catch people up with learning English. The other group has to be read to. She was saying that there are parent volunteers and aides that sometimes would come in and help because their student-teacher ratio was always over. And that's just really important for kids to be read to, and it's, I think, sad. But anyway, that those kids could be either pulled apart or set aside and kept in the classroom where they're read to with the other kids. But homework would have to be where parents are so involved that they begin reading to the kids. And then lastly, how to deal with the kids that enter at their grade point level, and that they're not neglected and that everyone is inclusive. I mean, I don't know how they can do that with that kind of mix being there and that kind of overcrowding, but these were just some suggestions that were brought up to me. I've talked to I've talked to the Senator Todd Gardenhire. I've talked to people out of his office and several teachers. Some may come to speak on this in the next few months, but it's something where we could award the schools and say, now we're here, we've done inclusion, acknowledge us, here's an award for it. Now what can we do? We do have this other issue with overcrowding, and what are some ways to work with these three groups?
1 minute remaining.
Thanks. I guess I want to close by saying I want to see this discussed or maybe on the agenda, or know that these are things that you guys think about or can address in the next few months. I know that for teachers and parents it would be important, and it's just been something that has been on my mind for a while when I started this whole thing. I mean, it's all about the future of our community, and I know some of it's political, but it would involve Democrats and Republicans working together, and I think that's what our school system needs more of, and that the community would appreciate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rebecca Howard.
Good evening. Recently, a tenured school board member told me that he had been working with young people now for over 35 years. And if he's learned anything, he's learned that we cannot legislate morality and we cannot change the home. We can all agree that a person can't be forced to act right by passing a law. If we want to commit a crime, we're going to commit a crime. You and I have free will. But what happens when someone does commit a crime? Well, there are laws in our state and our country that say it's illegal. Is that legislating morality? Yes, it is. R.J. Rushdoony explains it like this: our laws are all moral laws representing a system of morality. Laws against murder echo the commandment, thou shalt not kill. Laws against theft are commandments against stealing. Even traffic laws are moral laws. Their purpose is to protect life and property. All law is concerned with morality. On top of that, we live in the state of Tennessee. Tennessee has laws prohibiting providing obscene materials to children. Tennessee has the Age Appropriate Materials Act. Tennessee has a law that makes it a Class C felony for a book publisher, distributor, or seller to knowingly sell and distribute obscene material to a public school serving any of the grades K through 12. Tennessee has laws that state a teacher can be fired for conduct unbecoming to a member of the teaching profession, which includes immorality. Tennessee has many laws in effect that contain penalties for those who commit crimes against moral turpitude. Moral turpitude describes an offense or crime that, quote, shocks the public conscience as being inherently base, vile, or depraved. Keeping all of this in mind, Hamilton County School currently has inherently base, vile, and depraved books on its library shelves and in its classrooms that contain sexually explicit subject matter, including graphic descriptions of rape, incest, sex with animals, pornography references, beating of a girl and then raping her, graphic descriptions of a teenage girl having an orgasm, getting group rates on abortion, gang rape, and on and on. If a stranger were to walk up to a child in a park and flip through the pages or read these books to a child, they would be committing a crime. But for some reason, in the name of inclusion, Hamilton County has found a way to get the books in. Rape, incest, and pedophilia are not inclusive or age-appropriate topics for schools. You are on notice. You cannot reframe this issue. You can't promote these types of materials as diverse and inclusive. You can no longer hide behind Scholastic and American Library Association and allow sexual perversion to permeate the halls of Hamilton County schools. Only someone who hates children would stand by and do nothing while the government school system uses sexually perverted material to wage war against our country's children. As William Wilberforce warned, you may choose to look the other way, but you can never say you did not know. I sent you should have an email with all the books that are in everybody's district. Citizens around the state are now being encouraged by our Attorney General to go to their county DA and sheriff on the issue of obscene books not addressed by local school boards. Hamilton County has a legal responsibility to decide what sexual matters are harmful to children, and Hamilton County Schools has a legal responsibility to follow the law and keep obscene and pornographic material out of the hands of children. I'm asking you to do a few things. Bring a policy forward that will allow Hamilton County property owners to file reconsideration requests. 2, create a policy that defines what a sex act is and what is considered sexually explicit.
1 minute.
Work with the state legislator to cut all ties with Scholastic Books, Gale, and the ALA. Regarding Gale, they provide age-inappropriate databases and advertisements to students via the Tennessee Electronic Library. Regarding the ALA, their primary goal seems to be to sexualize children by supporting sexually explicit materials in schools. And regarding Scholastic, there is an alternative book fair option called Skytree Book Fairs. 700 public and private schools have already replaced Scholastic with Skytree. They offer great books, and parents can trust them. This company will not install pornographic material into our county's classrooms.
Thank you. Richard Harden. Richard Harden. All right, we'll check at the end. Oh, okay. Sorry about that.
Good afternoon. I appreciate your time and for your continued pursuit for excellence in our education system. My name is Richard Harden. I'm a resident, homeowner, taxpayer, husband of an HCDE teacher, and father of one at Normal Park and 2 at CCA. I'm here to present my thoughts pertaining to the overall transparency of the system, my children's experiences of bias and discrimination as the code of acceptable behavior is arbitrarily wielded by administrators, and how the COAB could and should be used as a growing tool for children, not just a punitive cop-out. Though I had intended to give a scathing indictment of several administrators, after much reflection, I concluded that doing so would make me no better than the behavior I wish to see changed. Rather than air this out publicly, shortly I'll send that out to all of you guys. We all have an implicit bias. It's human nature. The National Institute of Health has published that implicit bias occurs automatically and unintentionally, that nevertheless affects judgments, decisions, and behaviors. The COAB should be in place to protect children and staff from bias and discrimination and to grow them by understanding consequences, not just reacting to wanton demonstrations of authority. Authority is bestowed, but power is earned. Many would say that its purpose is to give administrators latitude as to how to punish behavior found to run afoul of the COAB. But I say a well-published COAB with well-defined consequences should be in place so that administrators, faculty, staff, parents, and students alike know what the outcome would be before an action occurs, which begs to question whether we earn or inflict our positions in the community. After all, one knows what a parking or speeding ticket will cost before they either obey or break the law. This concept spills into every facet of our democracy, from how a military officer is reprimanded for misconduct. You could go on. But by doing this, we mitigate bias and quell discrimination. So why are school administrators given carte blanche? No implications should be prescribed beforehand, not at the mercy of a grudge. I'll borrow board member Joe Smith's words, with his permission, from 2019. I hear it every single day where one kid's getting suspended 5 days for something and this other kid over here does the same behavior and goes right back to class. Joe goes further to say, there has to be some consistency somewhere in regard to how we're handling this. Love and logic, which has been implemented in several of our schools, works very well. It argues that students should be given the opportunity to make decisions and live with the results. that misbehavior should be handled with natural consequences instead of arbitrary punishment, that misbehavior should be viewed as an opportunity for individual problem solving and preparation for the real world, that students should be guided to solve the problems they create without making problems for others, that dignity be maintained of both the adult and the student. Incidentally, these are what the entire Teacher Code of Ethics are written by for the NEA and the TEA. To quote one of the administrators of CCA, education is having teachers who find what you are good at and help you make you better at it. Sorry, that phrasing is hard to eke out. But it completely misses the mark. Yes, educators should help kids find what they're good at, but education goes a million miles beyond this hard stop. Dr. King said that education has two functions. One is utility and the other is culture. The utility of education must enable one to become more efficient, to achieve with increasing facility.
1 minute.
The legitimate, okay. I pray that as a community, we come to believe that the purpose of the COAB is to offer a framework to foster a culture of leadership, excellence, integrity, fairness, and transparency. In partnership with families, we have schools to teach and grow kids beyond what they're already good at. We have to be accountable for our actions or inaction. To gain the trust of parents, taxpayers, your constituents, and students, it's time for a good overhaul of the COAB with a single consequence per offense, lest we leave enforcement to the hands of a grudge. And while we're talking about property swaps and all of that, if we're not going to overhaul the COAB and make it fair for brown kids, white kids, the poor, the rich, and so on, I understand the county jail is up for sale. Thank you.
We have two that'll be speaking together, Ava Highfill and Benny Manaya.
To start, this is a thank you note to those that have helped us and are still helping us, and a call to action that those that didn't. My name is Ava.
I'm Benny.
And for those of you that do not know, we are from the Hickson High Band. This summer, Benny and I walked into our storage closet to find everything covered in mold.
We had gone into the closet to find our podium, but instead we found everything in ruins. We weren't sure what we needed to do, but we nervously went to some of the other adults there and told them what had happened. We could see the panic wash over them as well.
We tried to fix it somehow and get as much done before we told our band director, Mrs. Hart, but we knew that eventually we would have to tell her.
After that week, there was a dark cloud looming over us the entire marching season. We knew that we could have given up right then when we found out that our uniforms were ruined, but that's not what we were taught to do.
We kept pushing, coming up with as many ways as we could to direct our attention away from the dark cloud and instead trying to just give everyone hope. We made little mantras that we would say after practices and before competitions. We held friendly competitions for the sections. Anything that we could do to keep the hope that everything would be fine if we just waited it out. We have been waiting for 5 months and no progress has been made to resolve our issue. We have been waiting with no assistance from the people that could truly make an impact. We've been waiting for the light at the end of the tunnel, and there is no end in sight.
I spent my entire senior marching season suppressing feelings of anxiety and disappointment over an avoidable issue and wondering if I was going to be able to enjoy my year of lasts. I never got my last uniform fitting or last senior band pictures or last suit up for a competition. A year supposed to be filled with precious memories has now been tainted by the nightmare of constantly wondering what else will go wrong.
Our community were the ones to truly help. When we were kicked out of our own band room, Loftus was generous enough to let us use their facilities. When we didn't know how to move all of our equipment, the parents were able to help.
We lost more than $65,000 in total. This closet has been leaking for the past 7 years, maybe longer, and work orders had been put in, yet nothing had happened. Not only was our closet leaking, but our actual band room, as well as our music library, had been leaking as well. Multiple times would we be told that our facilities had been fixed, yet nothing had been changed and they would start leaking after about a week.
Each year, people turn a blind eye to the arts until they need something from us. We are still not sure if we will be able to get our uniforms for our next marching season, even though we've been requesting them for the past 5 months. I'm sure that we are all well aware that if this had been a football team, they would have gotten their uniforms immediately. We had to compete against bands that had legitimate uniforms this year, while we got to sport Amazon's latest fashions.
We made do with what we could, but we are tired of trying to make do. We are tired of barely scraping by every time that we want to buy a single new instrument. And we are tired of never being listened to. It is time that something actually happens, and it is time for this county to do what they intended when they said that every student matters.
In your portrait of a graduate, you say that every student should, quote, resourcefully solve problems using a creative mindset and consider the impact of solutions beyond the classroom. How can we solve problems and consider the impact of solutions beyond the classroom when the adults that should provide solutions in the classroom simply don't? We have been effective communicators and resilient learners, but now it is time for others to be culturally aware and community involved. By ignoring our cry for years, an even bigger problem has been made. It would have been much easier to just fix the problem in the first place, but now after 7 years, we are giving you a solution. We need $65,000 to replace everything that was lost due to years of inaction. We need support, and we are here in front of you, begging for you to support us, our passion, our education, and our band program. Mrs. Hart should be able to purchase the things that we need without having to unnecessarily plead for months.
My senior year has already been ruined. Please don't let it happen to the rest of my band family.
Thank you.
Jeanette Omarkill.
Good evening. How the state decisions impact our schools and funding is a concern for teachers. A through F school letter grades will be released this month, and the proposed voucher expansion will be coincidentally presented next month. If passed, it will continue to siphon money from public schools to publicly funded private schools who do not have the same requirements, standards, nor accountability. Private schools are not required to accept all students, to have an annual assessment aligned to state curriculum, to publicly report and be accountable for use of taxpayer funds and be held accountable for student progress, to be closed or go under state management for low performance, to comply with federal protection for students with disabilities. In fact, it's my understanding federal law requires public school districts to set aside funds to serve students with disabilities in private schools. Not just the pass-through, my understanding is that we are also required to do assessments every 3 years and track the student regardless of whether they accept services or not. There is no guarantee of equitable access to all aspects of school and learning. They don't answer to a state education department who is constantly moving the goalpost, RE the third grade ELA retention law. And the teachers are not held to the same license requirements forced upon public school teachers. No one understands the needs of our students better than those who work with them daily, but we are not being asked. Legislators are again making a broad education proposal without all the details in place. This is a poor way to manage our education system and our public funds. I've watched as many laws have passed impacting education, because I'm that old, that are just statements of results or theories with no specifics about plans or funding created. Instead of talking to education experts, I believe they are making decisions based on false or inadequate information. This is about our students. Nothing proves that vouchers provide better. Education researchers have actually shown the opposite has occurred. School choice has been an option in Hamilton County for several years in our public schools. Going to a private school has always been a choice that could have been made. The only difference is who's paying for it. We as a public system are bound by the Constitution to provide a free and appropriate public education to every student who walks through our doors. We can't pick and choose. As a state, we are not required to provide a private school education. That has always been a parent choice and cost. No, we know that from the start. There is also a wide range of costs and tuitions that come with that. Tennessee public schools are the foundation of the communities they serve. The foundation of our state's success is built upon Tennessee's public schools. Taking taxpayer dollars to fund private school tuition statewide threatens the strength of our Tennessee communities. We are strong because of our great public schools. Great public schools. Our workforce, our low unemployment, and corporations relocating here are because of our great public schools. When the voucher program narrowly passed in 2019, false promises were made about it only being for Nashville and Memphis. It quickly changed to add Hamilton County, and now just as quickly, the whole state. The General Assembly needs to continue to fulfill their constitutional obligation to provide a system of public education for our children. I am asking you to take a very strong stand against this proposal, that you ask for them to allow a reasonable time of 3-5 years to be able to track those who are using the current program. The expectations that the private schools be the same as the LOAs, that they collect actual data that can scientifically prove or disprove vouchers are successful before considering expanding. We have to look at this from a data, not an emotional viewpoint, if we want to see it work. Thank you. Have a happy holiday.
And our last speakers from the Red Bank City Commission, Jamie Fairbanks Harvey, Commissioner, and Holly Berry, Red Bank Mayor. And if you'll wait one moment before you start.
Okay, thank you all for having us, and of course, thank you for your service as elected officials. As fellow elected officials, we know it's not easy what you do, and we thank you all for your service. We are here to present a resolution voted on at a special called meeting last night, the City of Red Bank Board of Commissioners, and I'll let Commissioner Jamie Fairbanks Harvey begin.
I echo the words of thanks. And this resolution passed last night 3-2. Resolution number 23-1638, a resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the City of Red Bank, Tennessee, to authorize the city manager and the mayor to offer and contract for substantive and significant financial incentive to the Hamilton County Department of Education in order to facilitate the location, relocation, construction, and/or reconstruction of elementary school within the city limits of the City of Red Bank, Tennessee. Whereas a school facilities plan recently announced and circulated by the Hamilton County Department of Education proposed, among other matters, closing Alpine Crest Elementary, the only remaining Hamilton County elementary school located in the City of Red Bank, and consolidating the same with other elementary schools in a location outside of Red Bank. And whereas the City of Red Bank City Commission, indeed the entire Red Bank community as a whole, have expressed deep interest in retaining an elementary school within our city limits. Whereas thus far, several members of the school board, members of Hamilton County Commission, and representatives of the Department of Education have indicated that they're willing to pursue the possibility of keeping an elementary school facility located within the city limits of the City of Red Bank, Tennessee, only if the former Red Bank Middle School / high school site is provided for such a school, and for the City of Red Bank to necessarily make a commitment to that effect within the near term or the next few weeks. And whereas, lastly, on my part to read, whereas it has been clearly communicated that if the Red Bank former Red Bank Middle/High School site is not made available by the City of Red Bank, Tennessee, that the plans of the Department of Education is to close Alpine Crest Elementary and consolidate with the other elementary schools located at the current site of DuPont Elementary in the Hickson community within the limits of the City of Chattanooga. And
whereas the City of Red Bank is already committed and contractually obligated to an extensive planning process to discern, among other things, what is the best use of the former Red Bank Middle School/High School site. Indeed, over the past several years, significant ongoing community conversation and involvement within the City of Red Bank has offered up a number of possible uses and combination of uses for the site, none of which envisioned the use of the same as an elementary school. And whereas the students to be served by the proposed Red Bank Elementary School facility would have a service attendance area that substantially serves the population of the City of Red Bank, Tennessee, but by no means exclusively. However, a large percentage of the students served by any such new elementary school, whether located in the city limits of the City of Red Bank and or at the above referenced DuPont site, would still be residents of the City of Red Bank, Tennessee. Now therefore be it resolved by the City Commission of the City of Red Bank, Tennessee, at a specially called meeting of the Commission at City Hall on Wednesday, December 13th, 2023, beginning at 6 p.m. as follows. 1, that the city manager and the mayor be and they are hereby authorized to negotiate and offer substantive and significant financial incentives not to exceed $1 million to the Hamilton County Department of Education and contract with the Hamilton County Department of Education in order to facilitate the location, relocation, construction, or reconstruction of an elementary school within the city limits of the City of Red Bank, or on any currently owned or controlled school district sites in Red Bank, including but not necessarily limited to the former White Oak Elementary School site, the current Alpine Crest Elementary School site, and the current Red Bank Middle and High School campus, and or any other properties located in the City of Red Bank, Tennessee, exclusive of the former Red Bank Middle School site. And 2, that the mayor and the city manager be additionally authorized to offer and commit the city to execute necessary road improvements required to accommodate the project and which are all contiguous to any such new site and within the jurisdiction of the city limits of the City of Red Bank, Tennessee. These necessary road improvements are in addition to any negotiated amount in paragraph 1 above. Resolved this 13th day of December 2023. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Chair, or Vice Chair?
We got people in.
Oh, you do? Okay. Well, my comment was, there are people, I was saying I let my box up, so.
Okay.
I wasn't trying to jump.
That's okay.
I was trying to advocate
Thank
for
you to all of our speakers tonight, especially Ava, Ben. I've been up here for a little while now, a few years, and although I appreciate everybody that comes and that we listen to, I don't think that I've ever been more moved than you two young people. And let me say that I don't know if he's still here or not, but Justin Witt has worked tirelessly on this issue, and the whole thing has been about insurance companies battling. And anytime you have that, everybody knows what a nightmare that can be. But I have a little bit of hope for you. We really expect to hear something in the next week or two. We're going to have an answer for you. And you're absolutely right. If it had been a football team, would have had helmets and shoulder pads. I guarantee you that. And so you guys deserve it too. And thank you, you too, for what you did tonight. Thank you. Caritza?
Well, you actually answered my question because I was going to ask, what is the status of this and why? But I also wanted to say that unbeknownst to me, I attended senior night at Hickson and watched an amazing musical theater performance was what I felt like I was watching. I didn't know that y'all were dressed the way you were dressed because you didn't have uniforms. I thought, honestly, it was a part of your presentation. So I do want to say, having had that experience tonight, you all have done an amazing job considering what you said you all have been through, but you all performed very well. I was really, really impressed, and intrigued and followed everything. My little boy loves the band, so he was all into it and trying to figure out the difference between your performance and, of course, other performances that we see across the district and even in the country. But you all have an amazing band, perform very well, very talented young people. And so against all the odds that you have faced in the loss of your things from your band room and your library, you all have performed very well. And I will say that I will be following up with Mr. Smith to see what that looks like. I know you're a senior, and so you feel like it's a wash, but it really wasn't, because the uniform doesn't make your performance, right? You did an amazing job without a uniform. And so don't count it all a loss, because you didn't have the things that people say bands are supposed to have to do great work.
Ms. Thurman?
Yeah, my question for Justin, I guess you and Red Bank as well. I'm a little confused about this. If we're getting ready to vote on this proposal tonight, this facilities proposal, what does this do with all of that? I mean, are we gonna discuss that at that time? I just needed some clarification, because I'm not real sure. I know I talked to someone today, and they told me that this study that was being done is not gonna be ready till fall of next year. This consultant that they paid $150,000 for, I think. So are we supposed to wait that long to figure out? I mean, what's going on here?
Yes, ma'am. So just a reminder, we're not voting tonight,
Oh, I'm sorry.
just to clarify.
Yeah,
But
okay.
there are two recommendations around Red Bank. One is to work out an agreement with City of Red Bank over the old middle high school site. The second one is to build the school on DuPont. Mr. Connor and myself met with Mayor Barry, the town manager and assistant town manager, a couple weeks ago and talked to this. I know, Mr. Connor, you jump in at any time. He spoke at the town council meeting last Wednesday and addressed this. There are conversations around really three properties. There's White Oak, the White Oak property, the existing Alpine Crest property, and the middle high school. The existing Alpine Crest property is it's not even a consideration for a number of reasons. Number one, most of all, we'd have to rezone that school for 2 years, tear down the existing school, build on it, and then you've got traffic issues galore. $1 million is a really generous offer, but $1 million is not enough to really even affect the traffic at Alpine Crest. Wouldn't even address the road issues. The second site, White Oak Elementary, for a number of reasons there. I mean, I've talked about the slope issues. Justin Witt can speak to that more than I can, but front to back, it slopes probably 50 feet in the air. You've got a neighborhood that's right behind it. I think many of you maybe heard from some of those neighbors when we had buses over there for a few months. And so that creates issues, along with, again, the traffic pattern for a school of that size. So we've been I feel like very clear with the city of Red Bank that we're willing to work with them. They've really asked for several things that I think that we've done a pretty good job of addressing. One is, they talked about having a school in the city limits. There is an option. It's at the Red Bank Middle School site. Another, they talked about the size of the school, which we've been explicit in this, and making sure that the size is appropriate. And the third is a clear feeder pattern to Red Bank High School, which I think that we're pretty close to fixing. And so, not fixing, but making it a cleaner feeder pattern than it already is between Red Bank and Hickson. And so, the meeting they called last night was, I don't know how that really affects the conversation. I think that's up to the board to decide as we move forward. I don't think we can wait until the fall to make a decision about this school.
That's what I'm wondering. So, just from my conversations, I think it's going to be like, they said it's going to be like $3 million to even for Red Bank to bring the traffic pattern and sidewalks and things up for White Oak, even if they have to do that. So you're looking at $3 million there plus $6 million, that's $4 million. Of course, they just have $150,000 in consulting fees, it looks like to me, but I was just telling the consultant I was going to do what I wanted to do, if that's what they, because we can't wait. I guess I'm just wondering,
I've been very clear that we can't wait, and I think Mr. Connor has been clear with them as well in his conversations. So, I mean, you've got a recommendation from me and from administration in terms of what's on the table and a pretty
But
clear
when we get ready
timeline.
to vote, I mean,
That
if
you've
we can't
got
vote
two
to put it on
options.
the middle school property, if we know that's not gonna be available, I guess.
Right, and so I think you've got, you know, again, two options on there, and there are a couple ways the board can handle it. One way is to vote to essentially build the school with the site to be determined. There's a timeline on there between March and April that if the middle school site is not doable, then we would start making plans for the DuPont site.
Okay, so that's really the only option we have then.
Yes, well, it's
I
the
mean,
two recommendations that
Two
you have.
recommendations, okay.
Correct.
All right, I'm just confused. Okay, thank you.
Let me suggest we do this, Ben. I see your light, Mr. Connor, but I know that this is on our agenda, and we're gonna be discussing it at length. So let's go ahead and proceed in order down the agenda.
Okay.
Or is it something you need to interject right now, or can it wait till we?
Bit of both. But I just wanted to say, are we asking the mayor to make sure she stays so that she can speak if we could call on her, or how do we want to do this? Because I don't know if the mayor's able to stay for the whole meeting or not. Okay, thumbs up. So I just wanted to make sure that she was here if we had questions later on. It was important to me.
Okay,
So
let's go ahead and proceed down our agenda. And I'm sure that we'll have a lot of discussion about that issue when we get to talking about facilities. Yeah, go ahead, Ms. Jones.
So there is just one question over here with the
Okay, go ahead.
peanut gallery. So, the only options for land are, for clarity, are DuPont, or if we were looking at the old Red Bank site.
Those are the two recommendations you have. We own property on White Oak, close to White Oak Park, and we own obviously the Alpine Crest property. We don't feel like those are viable options. We presented the board with two options. Now, if you guys want to talk about other things, that's obviously the will of the board, but the two options in front of you are the old Red Bank Middle High School site, with the understanding that an interlocal agreement with Red Bank would need to take place prior to March or April of 2024, and the second site is the existing DuPont site.
Okay.
But we'll discuss.
Okay.
I think we all want.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I turned my light off.
I just want to, Justin, I want you to repeat that. You're saying that it has been looked at and White Oak is not a possibility? I have heard of Alpine Crest. I know that we would displace students. We can't, there's a lot of things there.
Everything's a possibility, but we're working within a limited budget. The terrain at White Oak, again, from front to back is, probably 50 feet. So you're talking about a building that's built into the side of the hill, multiple stories, which that's not a problem. It just, on that side, it would cost more money. The second issue that we see as a big problem is how close in proximity it is to an existing neighborhood. We don't build many schools like that anymore, that literally the property butts up to someone's house. You heard about it when we had buses there. And so there's some issues with that. The traffic flow into that building for a school the size of what we're talking about, 600 to 800 students, presents a number of challenges. Most recently, we've had the Dawn program there that on average probably had 50 kids at a time, sometimes maybe a max of 100. So what we've had there in the past is much different than what we're talking about here.
Okay. So, again, for the sake of time, I'll try to keep us moving. I'm sure we'll discuss all these issues at length when we get to that point on the agenda. So 1 through 6 are pretty normal, what we always do. We got some exemplars of excellence. I always enjoy that time. And then under our...
Mr. Chairman, we have a quick presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, thank you.
Oh, this is on. Okay.
Well, good evening, everyone. We have committed this year to bringing you quarterly updates on one of the commitments out of Opportunity 2030. For quarter one, we brought you Every Child Learns, or Every Student Learns, and today we're going to be talking about Every Student Belongs. As I say, just on cue, you lose the screens. So want to always ground this in our just cause, that all children thrive and experience a future without limits. We are always aspiring to this aspirational goal. I want to sit here for just a second on the values. We have really been reinforcing this with our leaders across the board, that our values are really what drive the commitments. I think all five of us, or all of us in here, are clear on what the 5 commitments are, but wanting to reinforce the values here. Specifically, the value of integrity, where we put kids at the center, the value of inclusiveness, where we embrace diversity, and the value of care, that we are committed to caring for people. Portrait of a Graduate, we have consistently said that when we do this right, when we fulfill the commitments that we have set, that these are the students that we would hope would graduate from Hamilton County Schools. Want to affirm the Hickson High School students who utilize the Portrait of a Grad to convey their priorities related to the band. And so we agree and want to be able to support you in that. We know our 5 commitments, and again, tonight we're going to be focused on Every Student Belongs. So these are the 3 objectives under Every Student Belongs. The first one, creating that sense of belonging in school and in the community. The second one is about strengthening those relationships between students and schools and families. And last is a deep commitment to student well-being. So these are the targets here. This is what is aligned in our strategic plan, 4 key targets. The first target there is related to student success planning and making those connections. And so you can see where we started as a baseline, that 32% of our kids had aligned connections in their student success planning, and we're wanting to see that grow across the board. The second thing there is around students showing that self-management, social awareness, and measuring that over time, that kids are continually growing in those competencies. Is everyone okay?
Just the monitor in front of Jill and I is out. All the other ones are on. Oh.
But, I mean, go ahead. I can see right here. Yeah, we got it right here. So go ahead.
I can share with
Go ahead.
I've got an extra one. Does anyone want?
We all kids of the
You got it.
80s. We can read. Go ahead.
Speak for yourself.
Fabulous. The third one there is our parents responding favorably to the focus on student belonging. We are continuing to have parents engage with the pulse checks that we do, and we think that that's a good quick feedback loop that we're getting, and so wanting to prioritize the feedback that we're getting. And then that last metric there is around the reduction of disciplinary infractions. Dr. Robertson and I right now are conducting touch points with all of our executive directors and chiefs, and this afternoon we had the opportunity to spend time with Dr. Patricia Russell. It's a lot of R's. And we're really pleased with what we're seeing in terms of a reduction of discipline, and particularly a significant reduction in exclusionary discipline. So we're on the right track there. So on the right side here are the strategies. You remember that the strategies in the strategic plan have been outlined to direct us, but on the left I'll just point you to some of the key initiatives. You're all familiar, I believe, with these initiatives. I talked at length in October about the academic press and personalization framework that we utilize. I think the best way to think about that is learning and care. What we're talking about tonight lives on that care side. Advisory blocks, all of our standalone middle schools have advisory blocks this year. Dr. Robertson and I have had the chance to talk to 2 middle schools so far this year. It's a game changer. Our kids are really communicating stronger connections and conveying that they have opportunities not just to build relationships with their peers, but really connect more with the educators. So that's been really big for our middle schools. Several of our high schools have done that as well. School clubs, we're seeing school clubs across the continuum in our secondary schools in particular, but they're popping up in elementary schools. We're also seeing some external partners who are initiating school clubs. So again, that connection to school, the connection to the community. Supplementary staffing model funds, you guys remember that the schools had autonomy to use those funds as they wanted to in response to the needs that they had, and several have purchased things or chosen things that drive at this belonging piece, and so we're seeing some great outcomes there. You're all familiar with student support coaches, and I'll talk about that a little bit more on the next slide. And then we know we're increasing that whole support team to be including more counselors and more social workers in our schools. I'll tell you, I was at Allen Elementary on the first week of school, and I met a social worker who had moved to our city from out of state. And she's been a social worker for a long time, and she said, just looked at me and said, I've never ever been in a place that prioritizes student well-being like here. I feel like I'm in utopia. That's a direct quote from a social worker at Allen, saying that in that team that they felt like they were finally equipped and staffed to meet the needs of the students in their building. And we're certainly seeing that all over our county. All right, so year one of the student success coaches, or student support coaches. Just looking at this data, I won't go into every single detail here, but you can see the number of kids that have been supported. We're having the student success coach or support coaches really identify kind of how their time is being used, so we know how to best support them from a district level. So spending lots of time with many, many kids. That second indicator about the teachers served, I think you remember when we brought this position to you in the spring, we talked about it being this balance between student facing and teacher capacity building. So you can see that teacher capacity work there. Lots of connections with families. Again, another role in the school and another conduit for families to reach directly into our schools and connect with our educators in support of their kids. Lots of participation in community events, collaborations, and of course, school, classrooms visited. Again, the student support coaches sometimes are going into classrooms to provide some support around classroom management or just care in the classroom to support the teachers who may be dealing with situations with students that they need additional support with. So again, the student support coaches are reaching out in every way, communities, families, students, and teachers, which is exactly how we intended. I think the last thing I'll say here before I go through what's on the right side is that what we had hoped with the student success or student support coaches was that our schools would be innovative and responsive based on what they needed in their buildings, and they all have been. They've really utilized that coach to adapt to the needs of their building and are getting better and better at understanding how to best use them every day. And I think as we continue to implement this particular support, we're going to continue to reap the benefits. So there on the right side, we just really believe that when we set that positive school environment and focus on wellness and student connections, that it really drives an increase in learning. That our theory of action is really that when students are well and we take care of them and the whole child supports that they need, they in fact learn more and it accelerates their learning. And this last slide is just about you seeing we're building connections student to student. Again, this is in our academic press and personalization. Student to educator, our kids are feeling more connected to the teachers and educators in their buildings and the school community. And that's an update on Every Student Belongs. Happy to field some questions if we have any, or comments.
Thank you, Dr. Stewart, and I apologize for getting out in front of you there. Mr.
right.
Perez.
So I was gonna wait for this for budget season, since last year's budget, the support coaches was really the push. I think 1 year is too soon to really evaluate whether that's the best use of funds. So like, there's no question that we gotta grow, but I really did wanna know, cause I'm not getting all across the board the same response about support coaches. I'm getting from some, like, they're incredibly helpful, life-changing for the school, and I'm getting from others the opposite feeling. Those, and I think it just probably has to do with individual and not necessarily with across the board, you know, how one approaches it versus the other. But my question then is, how are we measuring and evaluating the effectiveness of a coach within a system so that we know how to tweak the strategy to really serve our schools best? So what feedback are we getting, and who are we seeking feedback from?
Yeah, so the student success coaches or student support coaches, I don't know why I keep on success, but student support coaches they're surveyed every month, and I'm happy to bring you that data in terms of their understanding of their role, their connection with the team, sort of the outcomes that they're looking at and they're measuring. So that's a qualitative piece. Quantitatively, what we're really looking at for measures of success are around attendance. Is our daily attendance going up? Is our chronic attendance going down? And then discipline infractions are the student sort of facing pieces. Are our kids coming to school more, and are they meeting our expectations more? I think some of the challenges that you might be hearing about, and I don't want to project, but some of the challenges we're hearing are around confusion around roles. So the role of the social worker and the counselor and the seed coach, and how do they collaborate together? And it's actually, you know, if you're going to have a problem, it's not a bad problem to solve. You know, which one of this team is first taking the lead on the student support side of things, and that communication stream and making sure people are taking care of the kids that they've been assigned. There's some growth opportunities there. There's some growth opportunities around how principals consider how to bring them into their instructional leadership or into their leadership team, and how to use them in terms of communication out to the school. And then, to be fair, it's a new employee, and some of it is relational, right? So I was in a school this week, and it just hasn't worked out with the skill set of the coach that they thought and the needs of the school. So some of that we see too, and that'll I think take care of itself as we go over time, in the sense that principals will have a stronger understanding of what it is that they're looking for. Certainly our seed team is providing professional learning about what the expectations are and building the capacity of that team to meet those expectations. So I think all of those things are things we're acutely aware of and consistently working to continuously improve.
Ms. Black?
Hi. I apologize for my voice tonight. I have been getting some of the same feedback of like role clarity. Everybody is very excited about the extra help and the extra staff that is focused on discipline and well-being and helping kids regulate their emotions and all this kind of stuff. But I just wanted to let you, like, I've been getting the same feedback of like there's some confusion on the seed team of like who's supposed to do what. And I think a little bit more clarity is needed. You know, whether if the student support coach is supposed to be like the on-the-spot immediate person that helps the kid like calm down and then makes whatever referrals, whether it's counseling, whether it's social work, to address the longer-term needs. I think that just needs to be clarified, either from central office with administrators or meeting with the leaders of the seed teams across the county and kind of figuring out, you know, what that looks like. But I'm getting the same feedback. But overall, I've been getting a lot of positive feedback of being very appreciative of having more people in the building and more investment in student well-being. Yeah.
You know, meeting with Patricia today, she reminded me about, I don't know, a month or 6 weeks ago, we released a document to schools around role clarification as a result of this exact feedback. So we expect it to obviously improve, and I think this was one of the challenges that we expected to run into.
Well, and it's the first year. Yeah.
Right.
Mr. King?
So I had a lot of positive from my district. The one concern that was mentioned was the ease or the lack of ease of getting the support people involved, either through paperwork. And I know as you get going into this, you can have schools that are very successful, maybe share strategies with the schools that have had some form. But that's the one complaint I've been hearing is sometimes it takes a while to get those support people involved.
Sure. I think one of the things we tried to do was provide guardrails without being too restrictive. And I think what we'll have the opportunity to do going forward is like, what do we know is a really good practice that we should elevate and encourage more schools to use? You know, in terms of like, how do we communicate between people? Is there a common referral, or is there an internal system? Those kind of things I think we're going to continue to learn about. We did try to give a lot of kind of movement for schools to be responsive, and now I think we'll start to see really elevated practices that we should highlight and move forward.
Anyone else? Thank you, Dr. Stewart.
Yep.
Committee chairs. Any committee chair? I know that Caritza's going to have a lot. We'll get to that. Facilities.
I'll just wait till my part of the meeting.
Okay. Mr. Winnigat?
We'll have a policy committee meeting as soon as we get back from the holidays, so I'll get with Ms. Ford on that. And you guys have already seen there'll be some first reads coming up in January, more so than anything that's happened in the last couple months. So we'll get together on those.
Okay.
And budget we'll start next year. The fun part of the budget. So, I mean, January 1st, I expect everybody here.
Okay.
No, we'll just start early.
Ms. Black? Oh, okay, you just didn't turn off there. Okay. Okay.
Sorry.
All right, now let's go back to our agenda review. Again, I apologize. Won't be the first mistake that I'll make, I'm sure.
Amen.
You've been talking to my wife, Ron.
I know your wife very well.
Under it looks like the first six is pretty much what we have each time, and I mentioned that before. Under our consent agenda, is there anything there that anybody wants to pull out right now and let's talk about, so we'll be prepared to vote after a while? Anything that jumps out there?
Yes, I had a couple.
Okay, go ahead.
Under 7D3, under federal grants and state grants, I just need clarification. What is HQ, either IM or HQ1M, literacy?
It's high quality instructional materials.
Oh, okay, all right. And then BJA's Stop the Violence Program. I haven't heard that one before either.
Say the number again, please.
It's also under 7D3A. BJA's Stop Violence Program. Was curious what, it's not a part of the Safe Schools, it's not a part of the,
Can we come back? Give me a second to find that.
all right. It's probably one or two after the high quality.
2.140.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, federal grants, state grants, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mr. King, give us a second to figure out what it is and get
All right.
back to you.
Yep.
Gotcha, we'll come back to you, Gary. How about
That'd be
that?
fine.
Okay. Anybody got anything else? We got some, second reads there,
I'm sorry, in the consent agenda or else?
under consent right now. Anything else anybody wants to look at under the consent agenda?
Well, I have a question about something that we voted on last month, but yet it's back on the agenda today.
Board policy
Board matters, the.
6.3.
the-
Nothing.
We'll get there.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
Just right now, we're under consent.
Oh, okay.
Anything under the consent agenda that anybody wants to talk about, and Gary's still waiting for the answer to his question.
It's gonna take us a minute.
And
so
you-
we'll move
yeah.
on.
Okay. It's just something I hadn't heard of. And
I
was
think
just
it's
curious.
I just want to make sure I don't tell you wrong, so I'm going to check it.
Okay, under administrative business matters, is Dr. Sharp here in case we need to ask him anything? These are under his name, but is there anything there that anybody wants to talk about? Capital projects, I'm surprised somebody don't want to talk about that.
I will ask one thing.
Okay, go ahead, Gary.
Well, this would fall under Neely Parker, but on the part regarding the charter school renewals, are we gonna have some data on them? Just, I know about the only data we get is like the testing, but there's a lot more stuff. So I was just curious, how these charter schools are doing in performance versus regular schools, our public schools.
Yeah, Jim Bowles is here. He can talk. We don't have specific exact data, but he can give you kind of high level how these schools have been performing as you guys make this consideration.
All right.
The charter schools are public schools too.
Yeah, they're public choice.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Traditional public.
Yeah, we gotta make sure you know all the.
Hey, how are you? Good afternoon. So our three schools that are up for renewal are CGLA, Ivy Academy, and Chattanooga Charter School for Excellence Middle. CGLA continues to perform at a high level, in particularly with their ACT scores and graduation rate. Ivy Academy also took a little bit of a dip during the pandemic, but is working their way back out just as the district is. Their graduation rate is also doing very well. They are quite a popular school as well in the school choice world. CCSE Middle School is a bit of a two-sided coin. They, this past year, and CGLA was a banner school, level 5 school as well. CCSE Middle School was a level 5 banner school this year for their TVOS growth, but just recently were named as a priority school for their overall success rate. So that is new information coming to us just recently. So we wanted you to be aware of that while they have made improvements in growth, they have been named a priority school for the next 2 years. So they could possibly work their way off within a year, but we will hopefully have them off in the next 2.
Is that mainly for their achievement scores? Because of their achievement scores?
Yes, sir, for their overall success rate. So the real focus, obviously for English and math, but the real focus being for math for them.
So if the board votes to approve these charters, how long is that good for?
Those charters are for 10 years.
Ooh.
It used to be a shorter window.
Well, they do come up for, they have every 5 years a
Yeah, there's a midterm grade.
midterm evaluation.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I know the.
there are
I
people
know.
lined up.
I know.
But Ms. Jones, you're first, so you jump right in there.
Because I unclicked it and then.
So that was one of my questions why Tiffany just said it out. But with the 5th year mark, do we have at that time the ability to reevaluate if we're going to what can we do at the 5th year mark if we're not feeling like,
Well,
what is our realms of?
There's a really detailed matrix that we go through to evaluate. So it's a standardized review process. Really, the only reason that you would revoke a charter at the 5th year is if you find them in material non-compliance with their charter, or they're doing something that that this board thinks is being dangerous. And so but there's a cure process for that as well. So it kind of depends on what you're talking about.
Yeah, it would have to be something egregious for for us to revoke at the 5-year point. What will happen is if for some reason after 2 years they are still deemed a priority, if I understand this correctly, I believe the board will have the opportunity to give them another year of possible probate. They could revoke or give another year to turn it around, and then if they fail a second time, it would be an automatic
takeover
requirement.
So this is I'm not picking on anyone, but Rhonda's been here the longest with me. So Rhonda, when this was when I first got on the board, it was CGLA, Ivy Academy, or maybe there was only 2 at that time. They were on the priority list with the other schools that are traditional schools. And Ivy, did we not give them like a conditional year, but then they came back up? I mean, they raised their standard.
Well, I think there was a lot having to do with the administrative part, and I think that it was under new administration, and they got a lot of that worked out. I think a lot of that was financial.
Okay, but they did come back up,
Yes,
right? So
yes,
we
they
didn't have to
did.
work. We didn't have to
No.
reconsider, if I'm not
Ms.
mistaken.
Herman is correct.
Okay.
They were on the priority list, but this board didn't have to do anything. There was a change in leadership, and
It kind of took care of it.
things turned around.
So that leads me to my 3rd question. Well, I don't know at this point. What up question? Was Chattanooga Charter not an issue a couple of years ago? Like, did we not? Was this not a thing a couple of years ago with them?
I mean, there have been some issues here and there. I think that the difference now is, and I'm going to get the name of it wrong. It's not ATSI. CSI, they're on the CSI list, so that's kind of elevated the questions around performance. Just to be clear, I don't think, and Scott, you helped me with this, I think 1 year on that list, there's really technically nothing else the board can do except to approve this 10-year thing. Now, there are laws around if they stay on that list or appear back on it, then the board can take action to help me.
Well,
Something about
initially,
pull back their charter. There's a better
Revoke?
technical term.
Yeah,
Revoke, sorry.
Before the board would go about revoking the charter, there are steps that the administration does to hold them accountable. So if their performance continues to suffer, then the administration is going to be looking at various metrics and asking questions. What are you doing to address this? What are you doing to address that? If at any point in time the administration becomes concerned that the administration of any charter school, I won't pick on one in particular, any charter school doesn't get it, that they're not compliant with the expectations of the State Board of Education, Tennessee Department of Education, or this board, then they can recommend to this board ratcheting up the step. And so maybe you put them on notice, fix these things within a defined period of time. Again, it depends on what the violation is within the charter. You give them more time to address academic performance, health and safety. You can give them 30 days basically. So the fact that you are renewing the charter tonight does not mean that this is a set it and forget it kind of thing. This isn't a crock pot. You always have the opportunity to come back and see what's going on.
Okay, so I just want to clarify this. By no means am I saying revoke their charter. I'm just trying to, one, give some background, and then two, just get an understanding of what that process looks like. And I did hear, I call him Coach Bowles. I did hear Coach Bowles say that there are things put in place to help them support and try to get it up. So is it like peer support? So like the other schools that are doing well, do they get peer support from those leaderships?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we will have a team surrounding them, both from the district level and from the state level, supporting them.
Okay.
From us, that's not, I think you were asking other it's us.
From us.
Yeah, no, I mean peer,
Yeah,
is an
yeah,
educator.
absolutely.
Peer educator. No, it doesn't have to necessarily
Both
be
from the district
schools,
and
but-
the state.
Okay,
Yes.
okay, thank you.
Mr. Wingate.
So my question is for Mr. Bennett. So when I first came on the board, it was my understanding that when a charter was brought before the board to be recognized, a new school, for example, Chattanooga Prep, that our vote was really a formality. If they met conditions set forth by the State Department of Education, we could say, no, we don't want to have another charter school here, but at the end of the day, if they checked the boxes, there was going to be a charter school, correct?
That's correct.
So I'm still not hearing the answer here. If there are academic metrics tied to their charter, because I'm hearing you say safety, other issues. If they continue to perform poorly, I've heard we could ratchet up what? Because if it's just a formality for us to approve their charter, then it's not a formality for us to revoke their charter?
Correct. And the rationale here is that in Tennessee, the notion is that public charter schools should have the opportunity to be created and to exist, and parents should have the opportunity to make that choice. And when they're coming in with a clean slate, as long as they have an idea that they can present that is financially sound, it presents good pedagogy, and it looks like they're going to make a good run of it, the assumption is that they should be entitled to that chance. When you've got 10 years of academic data that shows that maybe they're not being successful, and that despite the fact that the administration is coming alongside and highlighting points that they need to address, if they are not successfully addressing those points, well, now you've got some hard data that indicates maybe they don't need to continue in business.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a different standard. The presumption is they should be given a chance until there's data that accumulates that suggests maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah. So even with that data, though, the administration presents that data to the board, and then the board, in a sense, is making a recommendation to the State Department of Education to revoke their charter?
No.
Because we have the power as a board to revoke the charter of that school.
The board has the authority to revoke a charter based upon data that demonstrates they shouldn't be in business. Now, they have certain routes, certain appeal routes there, but again,
Appeal to who?
The state. No, but understand
Right.
that,
That's where
I
I'm- that's
understand
where
what
I'm
you're
going.
saying.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, but it's a different consideration.
Yeah.
It's a different consideration. On the front end, the assumption is you're gonna give the school a chance to prove their worth. When we get to the point that we're talking about, we have some data that suggests maybe they're not doing a very good job, the conversation changes. And so the burden of proof shifts. Make sense?
It does, but what I'm saying is, even then, though, it's a recommendation from the Hamilton County Board of Education to the State Department of Education that we see evidence that this school's not effective, right? And that, again, I'm not looking for an opportunity to take anyone's charter. I'm just trying to understand our role in this because, again, it was made pretty clear to me early on that, I mean, I could vote against a charter if I wanted to, not that I did or I didn't, but at the end of the day, if their application with the State Department of Education checked the boxes and the financial plan was sound and the administration looked at the academic plan and it was sound, we could have 11 no's and it wasn't going to make any difference.
What we're talking about is a fundamentally different conversation. If you reach the point where the administration is saying, we think you need to close this school, what you've already decided is you need to figure out what to do with several hundred kids and where you're going to put them. So there's a lot of gravitas that comes with that recommendation already. The administration will have already dotted the i's, crossed the t's, and have exhausted its efforts. And I'm not an educator. I have to defer to Jim Bowles here about the steps that would be brought to bear. But at the point in time that you have the data where you're willing to make that decision, my assumption is that it's going to be very difficult for the state to second guess you. We're not there yet, and so to some extent, I'm having to guess a hypothetical.
Yeah. I think the criteria is set by the state. It's not like a question of whether or not we had the authority to revoke it. It's like if they're on the list twice, then you have the authority. So it's not like us setting these random.
So there's a
targets.
standard.
That's right.
There's a standard, and certainly if you are on that list, we're following that criteria. There are other criteria too that may come into play. The point here being, this is not something that the administration is going to recommend lightly. We're going to follow criteria, and if it's either spelled out in the charter that the charter schools agreed to, or it's spelled out in the rubric that we have to follow when we're doing an evaluation, it's something we'll take seriously. And I think if the board were to do that, you'd have the artifacts to support it.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Perez?
So I think I'll dance a little less maybe around the issue. I think, one, we have great charter schools in our community. I'm thankful for those and want to keep supporting them. Marco Perez could decide tomorrow, download a proposal from ChatGPT to open a charter school, and if the proposal is well-written, someone who possibly should have no business opening a charter school could do it. What I'm hearing that concerns me, I think it's just important the public know, because even if this board voted no, I can still go straight to the state and say, my OpenAI document's pretty good, and I want to be approved, and the state would say, yep, we like your document, and move on. 10 years later, you will evaluate me, 5 years in between, and tell the public, you know what, he's not really doing a good job. So I'm not against charter school. We have phenomenal charter schools. We're very blessed as a community to have exceptional charter schools. But I do think as there's kind of this will to expand, it's very important that the community understand that it's not a riskless expansion. For 10 years, students will have been affected by Marco's charter school. I hope I never want to open a charter school. Against me. Students will be affected by it. Again, I am so thankful for the charter schools we have, but I do think as this keeps moving around, the reality is you would have to have because I would take you to court. So you would have to have very clear criteria to say we're shutting him down, and I would fight that. That's why I say I think we're kind of dancing. That's the reality. I am thankful for our charter schools, and I'm not an anti-charter school. I think they've been given leeway that we sometimes wish we could have in our own schools to try and experiment with some ideas, but we're not given that. But nothing stops someone like me who has 2 years of teaching background 20 years ago to kind of put together a plan and go and say, I think I can run a school that will impact 200 students, as long as the plan seems to be vetted and makes sense. I see you getting red, like, so I might be wrong, but I'm pushing buttons here, but I think if it weren't for the fact that Hamilton County has people who are very serious about trying to do an excellent job, we could also be dealing with charter schools that don't meet any of that criteria, and we would have very little recourse to change the path.
I'm red because my bow tie's too tight and I've had too much
That's
of my
what-
wife's Christmas candy.
So anyways, that's just kind of my comment. I'm grateful for the charter schools we have.
Thank you, Mr. Perez. I'm looking at my clock, and it's almost 6 o'clock. And we've got, in an ideal world, we'd like to get through this agenda during the agenda session so that we can get through our board meeting quickly, but that's not going to be possible. So what I'm going to do is close this agenda session and let everyone take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and we'll start our regular session. Any objection?
Only, can I pull something?
Yeah, I'd like to pull.
Well, they don't
No, let's wait till we get to the regular session. Take a little break. Okay, so we stand adjourned for our agenda session.